God commands us to let His word dwell in us richly in psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. We're to worship Him musically. We're to proclaim His word musically. And so we want to train up our students, our children, to be able to sing skillfully with music, to understand what they're doing. The Bible says sing with understanding. But it's all couched in studying God's word, growing up as Christian worshipers. Sometimes I know people are a little scared of music camp because maybe they're not a musical family, but it's for everybody. It's a mix of real beginners and more advanced students, and they help one another that way.
But the thing that really gives it weight and glory is that the whole week is focused towards a concert, a glorious presentation of the music we've been working on all week long. So there's this goal in mind. There's something that the students not just participate in, but actively create.
I'll see students who come in who have had no musical experience. You can tell they're overwhelmed by first day. They're just awed by it because they've been part of something that is new to them and much larger than them, something they've not experienced before. And I would say the majority of times, those kinds of students come back because they've tasted something that's really glorious, a foretaste of heaven.
These students are learning through the course of their time at music camp not to be music consumers, but to be active participants in making music. So not only to learn how to sing well, how to understand music as it's written on a page, and how it comes together in a group environment, but to be able to take those experiences and have them be the seeds that are planted for their involvement their whole life in the musical life of the church. We want these students to be the next wave of worshipers in the church who know how to sing to God.
Hey y'all, welcome to Water Break with Water Boy and Water Girl. Good to be with you guys. Always good to be with my wife on Thursday afternoon. We pretty much stream live every Thursday afternoon. Yep. And then, of course, the show drops on our podcast, too. Water Break Podcast on the Fight Laugh Feast Network and everything. So thank you for joining us. Topic of the show today is, baby?
High school age kids.
Okay.
Health, nutrition.
Awesome.
Kids.
Not mental health. Not mental health. Just health.
Unrelated completely.
Very unrelated.
Yeah.
Also, make sure if you guys want to email us, you can email us at RenchMedia@gmail.com. In fact, actually, we're just going to start here real quick before we get into the main topic. We actually have a question via email that I thought would be good to kind of bring up on the show. It's a big question. And Nate, who emailed us, said, I'm curious to hear what Annie's opinion is about probiotic supplements. Mm-hmm. When would and wouldn't she recommend them? What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I get asked it all the time. It's a big can of worms as far as I'm concerned. I'll just say, I'll give you a short answer here, and then that's on our
email. You can respond.
Okay. I'll respond, and I actually have a podcast interview with a pretty well-renowned gut health expert, basically, that kind of breaks down all kinds of things with regards to this topic. So I'll send it to you. I'll link it to you so you can listen to the whole thing. My issue with probiotics is I think that there's a temptation to just take all kinds of strains at the highest, dose that you can possibly get and just throw it down the hatch. And then we all just when we do that, we just sort of cross our fingers and hope that they open up in the right place in our gut, right? And a lot of times I think stomach acid kills things. They're not opening up in the right places. You're also dealing with quality control, with what supplement line are you using, what's actually in there. Yeah. And I think that right there is the reason why some people swear by them. They're like, they changed my life. And I think they're not lying.
Okay.
And other people are like, yeah, they do nothing for me. You know what I mean? So I just think there's a lot of confounding factors there. What I'm seeing right now is the highest success rate in terms of using probiotics is people who are working with doctors who understand gut health. And those doctors are addressing the root problem. And
not just subscribing Pepto-Bismol or whatever.
Well, I mean, and then utilizing often single strains in a very targeted manner.
Okay.
And I'm seeing a lot of that. And I feel like that's probably the way to go, as opposed to everybody just going to a health store and just like being like, oh, lactobacillus, whatever, and it has all these different, and look how many billion strains are in here, and they just, throw it down the hatch, and then it's just like, well, I hope that, I hope I feel better.
Kind of a shotgun approach.
Yeah, so I think if you want to go the probiotic route, at least at this point, your best best practice would be find a doctor who knows what they're doing. Talk to them about your symptoms. You might even want to do some like stool testing. There's some stuff to, there's things you can do to figure out,
okay, kind of target
what are what are my, populations in my gut like right now, because it's all about balancing, right? It's not about wiping one thing out or only having one of this other thing. It's about finding that right balance,
gut balance, that chemical gut balance.
Yes, exactly. And that's what people who have healthy guts have. So that's a short answer. And I will also say, I really like people to try and achieve a healthy gut microbiome as much as they can with food. And if you focus on prebiotics,
what's prebiotic?
Well, prebiotics are just the kinds of foods, and there actually are some really good supplements out there, because with food, it's hard to know how much you're getting. But that's basically certain types of fibers that don't feed you; they feed your gut. They feed the microbes in your gut,
like cauliflower,
like fish food, but for the fish, not for you. You know what I'm saying? Like, so there's different kinds of starches. Joel Green actually has a great one called Young Gut. That's the one that I use.
Okay.
And then a diet rich of polyphenols, and a lot of, just like healthy fibrous foods. That's how I like people to attempt to build a healthy gut. And a lot of people don't. They don't eat well, and they try to compensate by just taking like a probiotic. And I'm not saying that's true for everyone, but I would definitely address how you're eating, and address, okay, am I feeding myself the foods that are going to nourish my body? Am I also feeding myself the kinds of foods that are going to nourish the commensal, that's what we call the good bacteria in our gut. So those are just my thoughts for now.
I'm going to have to maybe put you on a timer.
Yeah, sorry. I'll shoot you, when I think of it, remind me, I'll shoot you a podcast to listen to. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. So again, email us wrenchmedia@gmail.com, and we'll try to answer more of your questions online if that's the way. And then, of course, you can actually right now, you can drop your questions in on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. So Twitter, actually, I can now monitor questions from Twitter in our nice little software tool here. So you can drop your questions here live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter now. So you can do that throughout the show, and we'll get to them as we're able. So for the topic today, we're going to talk about high school kids' health, and one of the things that we do as parents, I think a lot of parents tend to focus on like spiritual discipline with their family, with their kids, worship time as family, catechism, school, all that stuff. But we don't tend to think about kind of the physical discipline of our children, whether it's running laps or kind of maybe some better, more whole. What are you calling it? I like the better terminology. Whole food nutrition,
like nutrient dense
food. I like that term. That's a good term.
He likes that term.
I agree with that term.
Okay, good.
A lot of health terms I don't agree with. I agree with that term. So nutrient dense food for your kids, and why not create good habits when they're younger instead of when you're 35, all of a sudden you're trying to create good habits now at 35, which makes it a little more difficult. So I think this topic hopefully will help your family, maybe, and especially your children, establish maybe some better health habits. We live in a world where the obesity in children, I don't think that's ever been a thing in the past.
No, it's a real problem now.
Until our kind of 19th, 20th century.
Yeah.
And so it is, we've said this multiple times on the show before, but we live in such a world of blessing, a material blessing all around us, refrigerators that keep food stocked and all that stuff. And then in addition to that, a world that knows how to turn food into crackers and all sorts of candy and, bags of chips. I mean, that's something that we've never had in our world either.
Yeah.
And it's very appealing to our kids.
Yes.
Nothing wrong with a bag of chips. In fact, we should really do a show on like feasting and what the fun of feasting and what that should look like and everything. So nothing wrong with these foods, but what we've done is that we've kind of defaulted to these foods in such a way where we're creating maybe some bad habits and some bad disciplines in our children when we're younger. I know conversations can go farther than this, but but the main kind of point to this intro here is like, why not create better habits when our children are younger, and so that when they grow old, as Proverbs says, they won't depart from it, and they'll be set up for a better, a longer life in with the healthy bodies. So
yeah, well, I mean, that's all good and true, and I'm hoping that we can take this I specifically said high school age kids because those are sorts of the general age, but I have in mind with this particular conversation, obviously we could do a whole other
kind of that
podcast
13 to maybe 18-year-old kind of range.
I mean, junior high age kid could fall into this.
Yeah,
I think our 13-year-old 100% does
Yeah.
with everything that she's doing. And then, I mean, if you have a college age kid, this could totally apply. I mean, it's going to apply to almost to anybody. But I've been thinking about this demographic in particular, the like really busy, kind of run down, doing all the things, older kid.
Yeah.
And that's kind of who I want to touch on today. And of course, we could do a whole conversation about like nutrition for 5-year-olds. That's fine too. But this,
and this is helpful for me because I coach actually high school. I'm in charge of our high school girls program all the way down to 6th grade. So
right.
Great
so
application.
Stuff really matters. This stuff really matters. So I just want to define kind of who we're talking to, and then hopefully everybody can glean something. I definitely I know that there are all different kinds of kids out there living all different kinds of lives, so I'm kind of probably going to be speaking mostly to the kind of high schoolers or junior hires that I see around here and that I'm working with a lot, that I see my daughters, they're turning into. Our kids go to Logos school here in Moscow. It's a very, very academically rigorous school, which we love. And I know a lot of y'all's kids either attend a school like that, or maybe they're doing some sort of co-op-y thing, but they're doing a lot on the academic side, and the bar is high. And I think it should be, because kids are very capable. They're smart. We expect a lot of them. And then at least for my kids, or the kinds of kids that I'm thinking of, there's also like sports all year round, which they love and they're into. And we completely, the funny thing about this whole conversation is that we think sports are awesome for kids. I mean, it's awesome for them to learn to move their bodies. It's awesome for conditioning. It's awesome for the things that they mentally and emotionally learn, teamwork,
how to handle pain,
being tough, handling pain, not quitting, all those things. We're a huge fan. So we're not about to get rid of those, but they're part of the picture. And then if you lay down any other extracurriculars, if you do drama, if you do, an instrument on the side, if you do, these kids actually are doing a ton. Especially when you get into this age group, like junior high above, college in there. And they're also more independent at that point. I mean, a lot of these girls that I'm thinking of, like some of the girls that you coach who are like, 16, they drive themselves to practice. They're working hard. They're pulling all-nighters to, get ready for their thesis or whatever it is they're doing. And then they're like, I'm also on the honors choir thing. And these kids are doing so much, and it's really impressive, honestly. And I like it. I like the concept of kids being busy, kids being kind of Renaissance people, where they're good at, they're touching on everything. They're not just doing sports. They're not just doing art. They're doing a little bit of everything. Also trying to hold on to some sort of family dynamic, which is also a challenge. Gosh, we could do one about that. And we're still trying to figure that out. Like how much extracurricular is too much. How much
you want a family night? My family eat the dinner table every night.
We eat dinner together, like there's so many questions. But all that said, these kids are doing a lot. They're also in a phase of life development, I should say, where they are growing and developing very rapidly. Hormones are shifting. Brain development is going on.
Eating and buying new clothes constantly.
I mean,
and for our kids, constantly eating everything.
Because of how much they're doing and the fact that they're growing, right? And we have to remember that, like us adult, if you're like a 40-year-old adult, you're not really supposed to be growing anymore. So like, if we're growing,
you're most likely shrinking at this point.
You're growing outward. That's it. These kids are growing, and like their brains are developing. So it's just an intense time. And so I just thought, well, let's talk about how can we talk to our kids? How can we help them be the healthiest that they can be during this time? Because I think it's really easy to look at kids' lives. And again, I don't know all of your kids. I mean, there could be some kids out there who honestly aren't doing enough. There probably are. There probably are, who are just bumming around, and maybe you parents need to have a totally different conversation with them and be like, okay, let's make some goals. Let's do something with ourselves, But at least I know my kids, and the kinds of kids that I tend to work with and that I see in this community, that is not the norm.
They're pretty hard workers.
These are high achieving kids. These are high achieving kids, and they want to do it all. So I just want to talk about, like, how can we help their health? What are some things that we need to be aware of? What are some conversations we need to have, et cetera, et cetera. So let's talk about the nutrition piece first, because I think that's a really big one.
I'm with you.
Okay. And I mean, obviously food is so impactful for anyone. I mean, from a newborn baby all the way to an elderly person. Food is medicine. It's super impactful. So how much more so is that going to be true for a kid doing all the things, undersleeping, playing intense sports, trying to, exercising their brain at school really hard? It's a really big deal. And I I think I see kind of this dichotomy of two different kinds of kids. Either you see, and a lot of this is sort of informed by the way the parents treat their kids or raise their kids, and some of it might just be the way the kid is. But I see and again, I'm talking like high school, like, and I see this especially with girls. I see the undereaters, and I don't mean that like a lot of these girls are disordered, although some of them might be. That can actually be a common thing, so you do need to watch out for that. But a lot of times it's just like they're forgetting to eat, they're too busy to eat,
right,
and they're certainly not eating enough for all the things that they're doing,
right,
the physically and mentally taxing things that they're doing. So I see a lot of that, and we can speak to that. And then I see what I like to call the human garbage disposals, where it's just like Mountain Dew, bags of chips, like so hungry all the time. And either they have developed taste buds for this kind of crap food.
Right.
And they at least, maybe they're the kind of kid who sort of gets away with it, and that they're an athlete. They're not overweight. Maybe they're not. Maybe they are overweight already because
they're burning thousands of calories every day.
Yeah. But I see both. You see kids already begin to get overweight at this stage in life, and we don't want that either.
Right.
And then sometimes they're that way because that's the kind of food the parents are constantly giving them.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because this is an interesting time where these kids are getting older. They can walk to the grocery store. They can drive to the grocery store. So they can kind of control somewhat of what they're eating, but also they're mostly, at least in most situations that I can think of, they're still living at home and mostly going to be eating the food that mom buys and prepares and says, here, this is what we're having for dinner, or here's what breakfast should be, or let's talk about lunches. So they are still living under your roof. And for the most part, from what I can tell, you're going to be kind of still in control of that. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, for both of these, the undereaters and the human garbage disposals, neither of these kids are going to be feeling good.
Yeah.
Like neither of them.
Right.
Like not eating enough, you're not going to feel good. And, like you might be surviving, but you are not going to feel good. And again, I see this with girls a lot. And it is something to address and pay attention to. Okay. When kids are this old, it's really easy for mom to not like, because when you're, and I get it, I'm a parent, I get it. Everything's busy, everything's crazy. Maybe you've got some older kids, and then you also have younger kids, and you've got all this stuff going on. But when your kid is 5, you might be making them breakfast or at least overseeing breakfast. Yeah. So you have a little bit more of a handle on.
At 6 years old, we had a hard stop where
we're weird.
Our kids had to start making their own eggs.
Yeah, but
it's like you're old enough.
But we had conversations with them. Like,
we did.
Do not skip breakfast. You have to have eggs. All these things that I don't know that that's even very normal. But like when your kid's 15, I think it's very understandable that they may run out the door and you just assume they ate something and they didn't. And that can go on all year. You know what I mean?
And you don't know they're skipping breakfast.
And you don't know. And it's not like you're like, tell me everything you ate today. Like you don't want to, you know what I mean? So I can totally see how these situations happen. But again, either way, those kids who are under eating are not feeling good, whether they're in sports or not. They're not feeling good. They need to eat enough. And this is a time in life where usually the caloric demands are fairly high, again, because of the stress they're under, all the things that they're doing academically, physically, etc. And they're growing and developing. So usually the caloric needs are pretty dang high. And then the kids who are just being the human garbage disposal, they're going to feel like crap too, because you feel like what you eat. If you eat Cheetos and Pop-Tarts and, mac and cheese all day and chicken nuggies or whatever, you're going to feel awful. Okay. You're going to feel awful. You're going to feel awful at school. You're going to have bad energy. You're going to have mood problems probably. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the issues I think that are normally associated with, teenagers, where it's like, oh no, get ready. Here comes the teenage attitude, or, oh, they're just so tired all the time, or, like, why are you crying? And like all those sort of like, what you call that, a caricature. How much of that, okay, number one, is not appropriate, like parenting and some discipline when they're younger. Yes. But how much of it, I really do wonder, is that they are not sleeping enough. They are eating garbage and they just feel terrible. Because I mean, you guys, grown adults, try that. Try not eating enough and doing as much as those kids are doing and see how good of a mood you're in. Right. You know what I mean? And like, we're always like, you need to be cheerful. You need to be nice to your sister. You need to wake up at 7. What's wrong with you? Why do you keep saying you're tired? And it's just like,
you've been eating bad fuel or
just
or
not
whatever.
Eating anything, right? So like food really matters. So I guess if you're going to take away anything from this conversation today, and we'll talk about some other things, but, sit down and have a conversation with your children, because again, we're talking about older kids. They're capable, they're smart, you can talk to them about this, and you're sort of slowly handing that baton off in terms of who's the most responsible for their nutrition. You might be doing the shopping, you might be making dinner, but like have a conversation like, okay, what are you eating for lunch? Are you eating lunch? What are you eating for breakfast? And then let's talk about some, small changes that you can slowly start making.
Yeah.
Okay. Cause so whether they're overeating garbage food or under eating, both need to make changes. It will make a huge difference. And you have to educate these kids, because how else will they know?
Right.
And I think it's easy as parents to just, when they get older, just assume they know stuff when they do know a lot of other things because they've been taught that. But I don't know that a lot of schools are teaching good nutrition. I think that falls on the parent. And so these are conversations that really need to happen.
Yeah.
So do you have anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, no, I don't.
I don't. Okay. Well, a couple things. And this is something that our oldest, just for a reference, is 13.
And then 14. 14 is a lot.
14.
Yeah,
so we have
14.
a legit
older,
teenager.
yeah.
We have and so far so good. So far so good. I'm really enjoying having a teenager, besides the fact that she is a half a size away from my shoe size, and I am not happy about that because.
Is she really?
Oh yeah.
I didn't know that.
And
wow.
you better believe that my shoes are going to start disappearing.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. But other than that, we're having a great time.
That's a problem.
It's a problem. Yeah. And then we've got an almost 12-year-old and then an almost 10-year-old.
Right.
So that's kind of where we're at.
Yep.
So, okay. One thing that we've done already, and it's never too late, and I can't even begin to tell you how important I think this is for high school age kids, especially kids who are doing a lot, extracurricular, sports, whatever, which are a lot of kids, right? Teach them about the macronutrients. And I know that a lot of kids don't know what these are because a lot of adults don't know what these are. And I work with these adults. Okay. So you need to help them understand. And this might mean you as a parent also educating yourself if you're not sure. Macronutrients. So that's just your protein, your carbohydrate, and your fat.
Yeah.
What are they? What foods do you find them in? Yeah. And which of these, what are some healthy whole food sources? Like that right there, you guys, is a game changer.
Yeah, this is funny because I never knew. I mean, I never thought in those categories for one. But just watching our kids will make their own lunches for school. And Annie would be like, "Do you got all the macronutrients and do you got each category in your lunchbox and everything?" And they'll go through and like, "I got my cheese, I got my meat, I got my nuts." I taught them a long time ago, and I know. I'm into this stuff, so it's like comes more naturally to me, and I'm always thinking about it. But kids are smart. Like I taught them really young, and I think I've said this to you guys before. We bought these little bento boxes. And the rule was just you need a carb, you need a protein, you need a healthy fat, and you need a fiber, which is usually just like a fruit or a vegetable. And they're great. It's not that. It's really not that complicated. But I mean, like. I talk to high school girls who are like, "Oh, I don't eat lunch. Like, I don't know what to grab. Like, I don't know. I don't have time. And sometimes if I do have time, I'll get on an app and just order a whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's like really bad. So have these conversations. And then depending on who's doing the shopping, mom, if it's still you, like, okay, let's talk about what kinds of nuts do you like? Are you a sandwich person or are you like an adult Lunchable kind of person? What kind of meat sounds good? What kind of protein? Okay. Hard-boiled eggs. How does that sound? Work it out. On what those macronutrients are that you like.
Options that would work for the kid, and that they would actually eat. Maybe have them try to take some ownership in that. So like, okay, you like hard-boiled eggs? That's awesome. I'm going to teach you how to hard-boil eggs. You're going to do 12 at the beginning of the week, and they're going to sit in the fridge. And anytime anybody wants one, add a little salt. Great. You just need to have these conversations, and then you need to plan your meals. Yeah. And then you need to shop. And then the kids need to know where the food is, right?
Where the categorical food is.
And you also need to tell your kids to communicate with you. Like, I haven't eaten protein in my lunch in 10 days because we ran out of my favorite meat stick, whatever. Yeah. Just be like, you got to tell me. If your mom's the one doing the shopping, you need to communicate well, okay? Another thing that is really, really great is to food prep or meal prep, however you want to say it, at the beginning of the week, whether that's like Sunday night or Saturday or Monday, whatever works for you guys in your family. But I do a lot of this, and I think the older kids get, the more they should get roped into it too. So if you have and I include boys in this, I mean, this is huge. And if your boys are going to go off and live on their own, they got to learn how to take care of themselves, right? And, maybe bless others here and there. So like if you have like a 16-year-old football player who just basically has 2 hollow legs and just can't get enough food and he's trying to put on size, that scrawny, that type who's like, I'm trying to bulk. Teach him how to put a hunk of meat in the crock pot and then shred it up. So he has so much protein in the fridge the whole week. Yeah. Teach him how to use a rice cooker. Great. And then, whatever, some vegetables, some fruit, something that he likes. Buy him a good quality whey protein, set him up for success. So he's not just not eating enough or going and pounding 3 McDonald's cheeseburgers, which is what a lot of, and again, I get it. It tastes good. It's easy. It's convenient. I get all that. And I mean,
love me a good McDonald's
these kids aren't going to
cheeseburger.
die if they eat a burger and fries here and there. They're not. But what should their staples be? Again, so they can perform the best, feel the best now, and also, like you alluded to,
create some good habits.
Create good habits for later, so that they don't come see me when they're 30 pounds overweight because everything kind of tanked eventually, and they're like, I have no idea how to eat well, and I'm addicted to fast food. I mean, that's the trajectory, So you're trying to help them out. So, meal prepping ahead of time, getting your kids involved. The older they get, the more they can participate. So, like with my kids, I will make and they're very busy right now. So
wrapping up school.
It's a balance between trying to load more things on them. Like, I want you to make this for me. But still trying to have them learn. But at different seasons when they have the time, I try to get them involved as much as possible. But I freeze breakfast burritos with like eggs and sausage. I have a Starbucks egg bite recipe that they love. I have a muffin, like a banana almond flour muffin that they really like. So when I make those, they'll just eat one of
pumpkin
each,
cookies,
carb, protein, and they're like, yeah, pumpkin cookies. They love those. So, and I try to make things that freeze.
And I'll just add something here real quick.
Yeah.
This also kind of gives the kids ownership of their own. For one, it gives them involvement in food, but also ownership of their own food.
Yes.
Especially as they're making their own lunches, you kind of, giving them the skills and the knowledge to be able to do it well.
Right.
And it's a very simple way. And as our kids, I mean, like Liv makes bread. You ever making homemade bread out of some like super flour.
Einkorn. It's super flour. Yeah.
Super flour.
You're so
and
right.
involving them in the process. I've been involving Cash and starting to help me barbecue outside when I do barbecue and try to just kind of bring them into this. They actually really like it.
They love it, and it's something you can all do together. And I mean, you're preparing them for life. I mean, what one of the reasons that the freshman 15 or the freshman 30 is a thing is because as soon as you cut that little umbilical cord and you send your kids off to college, they're on their own and they're like, well, I'm just going to eat crap. I have no real life food skills. I have no knowledge. I have no idea how to take care of my body.
They just know how to make their favorite lasagna when they left home,
or just eat
like
dorm food all day. You know what I mean? So it's like, help your kids out and get them involved as best you can. And then those are the big things I want to talk about. There it was the macros, communicating, and then that food prep at the beginning of the week, especially things that can be frozen, and get your boys involved. They can do that. They absolutely can. Baked potatoes is another great cheap carb, because I know this can start getting expensive when you've got like 3 athletes who just won't stop eating. But beans, rice, chicken, pork, there's a way to give a lot of clean carbs and a lot of protein on a budget if you think it through and you batch cook and you use your crock pot, and then you tell kids, okay, so these are the carbohydrates, so have some of that. This is protein, have some of that, and then let's throw a fruit or a vegetable or whatever in there. Anyways, so and hydration matters too, obviously, and make sure your kids are drinking water and they have good hydration habits. Some people, it's all over the map. Some people are obsessed with it and they're like overhydrated. But I find a lot of kids who are really, really busy.
Overhydrated? Oh yeah. Like over drinking too much water?
Yeah, you can totally drink too much water, especially if you're not replacing electrolytes. Your balances can get really off. But I'd say more often than not, especially with how active they are and how busy they are, it's more likely to see someone who's underhydrated. So a very good just general rule for hydration is about 1/2 ounce per pound of body weight of water. That's just a good general rule for like general living. That does not count hydration loss during really intense or really hot exercise. So like if your son's doing August double days for football, he's going to need a lot more to
electrolytes
and water to compensate for what he's lost. So on that note, let's talk about kids and sports a little bit, because I get asked about it all the time. So like specific nutrition and hydration specific to sports. And this is not just true for kids, it's true for adults also. So it's just good information. And I get asked a lot. I think parents are like, what do I do? What do I feed them? So obviously the more active your kids are going to be, the more they're going to need to eat. And I just can't reiterate enough that when I say that, I mean, ideally majority whole nutrient dense food, even if it is as basic as a baked potato and shredded chicken. Okay. That's fine. That's completely fine. But make that the staple, make that the norm, make the Panda Express or I always use Panda, make that more of a treat here and there. Okay. And that's a good rule for life. period. Do note that what macronutrients you get in a day, it really is more important that you just get them in. The specific special timing of it does not generally matter as much. And I know a lot of people freak out about that. Like, oh my gosh, I just did a weightlifting session. If I don't pound my 30 grams of protein within 30 minutes, I won't get any gains. Not as much. They're really not finding that as much. Obviously, after a really hard workout, is your body like physiologically primed to be sensitive to nutrients that you take
More
in?
food?
Yes, absolutely. It is.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, just get it in. Okay. And this is why, for example, like using me for an example, I can wake up in the morning, eat a bowl of oatmeal, wait a couple hours, and have a great weightlifting session.
Yeah.
I can also eat a carb heavy dinner the night before to top off my glycogen in my muscles and in my liver, wake up, have coffee, be fasted, and still have a good workout because I got it in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, so it doesn't have to be like right before or right necessarily. Right. So don't freak out about that. Just make sure they're getting it in. Okay. I do recommend eating breakfast. I actually, honestly, the more this is one of the many things that my mind has kind of changed on. I went from what I was taught in college, which is like, it's the most important meal of the day,
Yep.
And that was made by like, who makes Pop-Tarts?
Kellogg's or whatever. Kellogg's. Kellogg's. Yeah.
They're like,
there's a
cereal.
Great Kellogg movie on Netflix right now.
Oh yeah, it's really funny. What was it called? We laughed all the way through.
It was really funny, but it's kind of making
versus Kellogg.
Yeah, they did a pretty good job. And Jerry Seinfeld was in it. A bunch of great actors.
It was the I don't know, the origin of the Pop-Tart.
Yeah,
and it was hilarious
on Netflix.
So that's what they
a little slapsticky, but
that's what they originally taught us. But it was all with like, eat cereal, eat Frosted Flakes. Yeah. That's the most important. And then and we were all like, well, that's not right. And then I kind of went through this phase where like breakfast isn't important at all. Time restricted eating, you can just skip it. It's easy, which is true. It's probably the easiest meal to skip. Yeah. And maybe some people are doing okay right now, not having it. But I think that if you are under a lot of physical and mental demand, if your stress is high, which these kids' stress is high, it is high. Starting your day with a good like protein healthy carb combo is very, very important. And it will also help manage their blood sugar, and that equals energy and that equals mood. Keep that in mind. That's what blood sugar means for those kids, among other things. It will help manage those things throughout the day. And it will also help mitigate that 11 p.m. garbage binge
trash can
that they're going to have because their hunger finally catches up with them. And again, this is very true for adults too. So what's worse, eating 3 eggs in the morning and having normal leptin levels and being able to control your hunger at night and go to bed like a normal person, or skipping your breakfast, maybe skipping lunch or not having a very good one, eating some dinner and then eating ice cream and chips at night 11. Because you're starving, right? So there's a lot of reasons to feed kids, especially athletes, breakfast. So again, you need to sit down and have a conversation. What is plausible? What do you like? What will work? What can we do?
Lots of eggs, huh?
Eggs are huge.
And even at this age, like our son particularly, we have him on a pretty good, nutritional dense diet or nutritional dense.
I think he eats well for a 9-year-old
eats pretty well,
boy.
But every night at about 8:30 when bedtime comes rolling around, he's like, I am hungry.
I know.
He still does that.
And some of that is that he's growing, but some of it is also that we are still working on him getting him to eat more at his meals.
He does need to eat more each meal.
He needs to eat more at his meals. I would let school lunches are hard. They get a very short amount of time. We put the stuff in there, but it's just like, I need to play around with it, like sending a whey protein shake with them. Like I need to play around with like, what can we do so you're not.
He likes that Athos shake.
He does. They call it a goat shake.
Goat shake, because it's made out of goat whey.
Yeah, goat shake. Yeah, no. And some of it is also he's just doing a lot. He's growing, and so I'm never gonna. I don't mind letting him eat. I just try to make it good food.
Yeah, right.
But if you are starving at 8 p.m. or 10 p.m., you do need to ask yourself, did I not eat enough earlier in the day? And specifically, did I not eat enough protein? That's a pretty good question. And that will remain true even as an adult. Right. Okay. So, okay. A couple other things on the sports thing, and then we can touch on some other stuff. So if your kid, like I just said, generally speaking, just get your macros and your calories in. The timing of everything is not generally that important. However, if you've got a kid going through a huge bulking phase, or you've got like a daughter doing some serious endurance running or like intense basketball, something that's just
our kids are just getting on track.
Yeah. Something that's just really, really intense. A good general rule of nutrition kind of right during that, like before, during, or after is about 0.5 gram of carbohydrate per pound of body weight. And then protein, you're normally looking at about a quarter of your body weight in grams. And again, timing isn't as important. You just get it in before, during, or after. Some of that's just preference. Some of that is just what works with your schedule. But get it in there if you're doing those things really, really intense. And I mean, like, I think of like what your girls do for basketball, like some of those practices. I mean, those girls are running.
They're running,
a lot.
Yeah.
And I said
for an hour and a half, 2 hours.
What kids are doing at track in the spring, you know, what guys are doing basketball too.
2-a-day football.
Yeah. I mean, they need to eat. They need some protein. And they honestly, the more, you know, cardiovascularly intense it is, they need carbohydrates.
Right.
I mean, and you have to experiment a little bit about which ones work, which ones sit well in their stomach. Maybe they're the kind of kid who needs to load up after the fact. Like kids need to be eating a lot of carbohydrates at dinner to kind of top off their stores for practice the next day.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah.
Any of that can work. You just got to play around with it and have them pay attention to how they feel. Like it makes some changes, clean up their diet and be like, okay, how do you feel?
Yeah.
How's your energy throughout the day? How do you feel when you're doing your sport or doing your training? How are you sleeping at night? Because this stuff it impacts everything.
Right.
And it's really healthy for all of us to connect what we're eating with how we feel. And I also think with kids, especially girls this age, weight loss, body fat, all these things can be a very treacherous road to, I mean, it just can be so hard depending on the kid. I much prefer at this age to talk with kids mostly about how nutrition helps you feel and it helps you perform, as opposed to how skinny is this going to make you or how big your muscles are going to be or whatever. And it depends on your kid. You can choose how you want to talk to them, but I like talking about it that way. I think that's just a much healthier way to look at these things. And I think it will help a lot of these kids moving forward have a good and a healthy relationship with food. Okay. And that's really important, right? Okay. So we talked about that. We talked about hydration, just basics like 0.5 or a half an ounce of water per pound of body weight. But again, if you're out there just pouring out sweat, like football double days is a great example. And that comes up a lot because that usually happens like in August when it's really hot. So people are sweating. You generally want to drink like, you got to drink back what you lost. So if you're not sure, one really good way to do this is very basic. Is just weigh yourself before and weigh yourself after and drink it back. Like that's old school, but they still actually do that. I mean, your body won't lie to you. And a good general rule during exercise, and we're talking sips here, right? You can't just go guzzling during, usually, depending on the sport, is to, and this is called the Galpin equation. I got this from Andy Galpin. He's an exercise physiologist who I absolutely love. He has a great Instagram account. If you guys are interested in like sports physiology and exercise physiology and nutrition and all those things.
How do you spell his last name?
Andy Galpin. I think it's Galpin. I could be wrong, but I think that's how you spell it. But he's phenomenal, like top of his field.
I'll look him up.
But his little equation that he came up with is during exercise, drink your body weight divided by 30 in ounces every 15 minutes. And that is really good. So if you're doing a triathlon, if you're doing double days, if you're at basketball camp where it's like intense, continuous exercise, and you know you're losing a lot of water, that's a very good general rule. And it will also help you immensely to go into that event, that sport, that training session, very hydrated, right? Because you can only drink so much during. Like we all know what that feels like. Like I drank way too much water and now it's just like jostling around in my stomach and that doesn't feel good either. Okay. Note that real whole food is also very hydrating. So your baseline hydration level, again, true for these kids, true for anyone. If you're eating fruit, vegetables, meat, there's actually a lot of water in that. If you're eating like the standard American diet, which is like highly, highly processed food, not a lot of water. So even like your baseline hydration is not going to be as good. And then lastly, electrolyte replacement. We talked a little bit about electrolytes when we did our supplement podcast, but really important, I think, for almost probably all kids who are really high achieving, stressed out, high school age kids. So probably just like a baseline daily electrolyte is a good idea. You might even need to give a little extra if they're like wrestling or playing football or whatever. And I think a good general rule is you're looking for a capsule, a replacement, whatever, that's going to give you probably on average 200 to 400 milligrams of sodium. Okay. And then also you're looking for like a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1 ratio with potassium.
Okay.
So that's a good general rule. All right. And I just want to note, coconut water is phenomenal and it's clean, like you're not dealing with red dye or gross additives, corn syrup, some of these like drinks like Gatorade or whatever. It's just gross what's in it, which is why
I love a good Gatorade while I'm sweating and working hard.
But
it brings back good memories too.
Coconut water
it plays 2 roles for me.
It's 2 roles. I think it's phenomenal. But it's interesting. It's actually almost flipped. It's higher in potassium, lower in sodium, which is really interesting. So if you want to go the coconut water route, I'm just going to put this out there because I get questions about coconut water all the time. Add some salt to it, because it actually could use some more salt.
How does that make it taste?
I mean,
could you just drop like a electrolyte, break a pill up and put it in there from electrolyte?
You could, but then you're also adding a little more potassium. So just add some like Himalayan salt, some mineralized salt, just to get those ratios ideal. And if you're doing long, high intensity or long duration intense exercise, sometimes you want to add some glucose in there also, and usually you're looking for like a 5 to 9% glucose in whatever it is you're drinking, which is what you'll see in Powerade, Gatorade, because they at least know that's what you need. And that is actually what coconut water is, which is one of the reasons it is so well known as an excellent electrolyte replacement. So I'm just going to give coconut water plus salt a little plug there, and I think we can leave it at that. Is that good? Okay, let's talk about sleep. Gabe and I fight about this sometimes.
Yeah, because I'm not 75 or 105 years old, in that range.
Just for reference, Gabe is horribly unhealthy and has super high blood pressure and high insulin. He is not thriving.
I'm the balance in this podcast. I'm the balance in this podcast.
Okay, his lifestyle choices, his blood work is reflective of them. So
I'm enjoying life really well, though.
He is having a good time, but he's also stressed out of his mind. And in his words, he'll sleep when he's dead. Yeah, but this isn't even. You guys have heard me soapbox about sleep. It is so important, and that is another thing my mind is kind of. I don't want to say changed on, because there was never a time where I was like, sleep doesn't matter. But I have over time started to really understand better and more the unbelievable impact that high quality, consistent sleep has on every single aspect of your health. If you want to lose weight, you got to sleep. If you want your cortisol to, look better, your adrenals to look better, you got to sleep. If you want your blood pressure to come down, you got to sleep. Like, all these things are so important. So keeping it in the context of what we're talking about today, which is like that high school age kid, these kids do not sleep. Like, they are terrible.
Most high school kids don't sleep
so much.
Yep.
They are overworked. They are not, it's like staying up late, doing homework. I mean, maybe they're doing homework. Maybe they're just not managing their time. Maybe they're on Instagram. Maybe they're scrolling. Maybe they're just like vegging out and watching a show, which, living this life, I don't really blame them for wanting to veg. And it's like, when else are you going to do it? But bottom line, they're going to bed at midnight. They're going to bed at 1. They're going to bed at 2. And then a lot of times they're not even just getting up at 7. They're getting up at 5 because they have volleyball, or they have something, or they have chamber or something, or it's crazy how little they sleep. And I think it is very easy for us as parents to chalk it up with like, well, they're young. This is just the way that it is. They can do it. They're young. And I mean, to some degree, I get that, but it is so unhealthy for their bodies. This is why kids have emotional breakdowns. This is why girls cry all the time. Often, this is why kids get sick all the time. This is why they get injured. I mean, this is very, very important. And it's hard because it's kind of like telling a mom of 4 kids, like, well, you just need to de-stress your life, and it's kind of like, how? And I get that, you look at a high school student who's doing all these things and is, up late doing homework every night. And you're like, well, you need to sleep more. It's like, how? But oftentimes, if you sit down with your kid and you have a conversation, like, we need to make some changes. I know you will feel so much better in so many ways if we can just get you more sleep. Usually there's changes that can be made. I mean, it can be managing time better. It can be just slashing certain things, getting off of your phone. For myself, like, I remember when I was in high school, I'm keeping an eye on the clock. I got like 10 minutes. When I was in high school, I was living this life. I went to Logos myself. I was doing all the things. I played all the sports. I was up due to sports. I was up at 5 most days of the academic year. Right. And I remember being so unbelievably tired, and so tired that I had to often throughout high school, after lunch, because that's like the drowsiest time of day is after you've eaten. I had to stand in the back of the classroom and take notes standing because I would just fall asleep at my desk. I remember falling asleep in junior high in driver's ed and falling out of my desk. Like, I was so underslept. And back then I just thought, this is just how I am. I'm always tired. My friends used to tease me that I didn't know the end of any movie because I didn't. Because I'd be like, yay, a movie. And then I would only make it through halfway and I'd be out. I couldn't sit through a movie. I would fall asleep at church. I was exhausted.
I mean, we can't do that now together.
I was exhausted. I was so tired. And so I'm just saying, you guys, like, try to find a way to bring sleep up. I wish coaches would make some adjustments here, even just like in like the culture of how, I don't know, schedules are made. Like if kids are out on a bus, playing basketball at night and they don't roll until midnight, maybe don't have 6 a.m. practice the next day. Like if you're weighing the negatives and the benefits of doing that to those kids' bodies, I don't think you're in a net positive there. I think they need sleep more than they need another hard practice. And there's this funny mindset in a lot of coaches and just in the sports world in general, where there's this old school, like, just like grit it out. Like just, there's no crying in baseball, like just the tougher, the better. And it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? But honestly, I don't think that's good for these kids' bodies. And I also think that if you want better performance, you as families, as the kids that we're talking about, as coaches, as an AD, everyone, you will get better performance if you prioritize sleep more. I really do believe that. And I would like to see some changes there because it's just everything. And I mean, like even just immunity, if we only talked about that, I mean, there's times when like 50% of the school is homesick.
Right.
Like these kids are just so run down. Right. And one of the best ways to mitigate that is to sleep. So I'm just going to put that out there. And if nothing less, if it's like, okay, they're so strapped academically, they're just going to have to be up late during the, the week. Prioritize sleeping in as much as you can on the weekend, or even taking naps. Anything that you can do to pay back some of that sleep debt. And again, have this conversation with your kids.
And I just want to add here that do not coddle your kids also in all this.
This is what Gabe's afraid of. This is why we're always like on the seesaw. Yeah. I'm like, I think they need more sleep. And he's like, no, they need to weed the garden at 7.
That's right. And so all what my wife's saying is very good, but don't turn this into, the next 5 years of coddling your kids. There's going to be seasons where you don't get tons of sleep because they got finals or whatever.
Yeah. And that's true of life.
That's just life.
That's motherhood, so you're preparing for it to some degree.
And you want to faithfully and in wisdom push your kids because you want them to grow. That's how God set the world. So don't take this conversation in such a way like you just want to constantly put like those bowling ball bumpers up on the sides of your kids the whole time.
Of course not. No,
I would I agree with everything my wife's saying here, but I want my kids to feel the pressure of what it means to grow because that's how God grows us. So
yeah. No, I think all those things can be true at the same time. And I think just honestly assess the stage of life and the schedule that your kid has. So if they are being pushed, being feet to the fire all day long, then that might be a time where, okay, we're going to make some changes so we can sleep more so that your body can continue to do this. If you have a kid who's lazy and isn't doing much, maybe they do need to get up earlier. It's like, get out of bed, do something. So,
and also
have discernment as a parent, of course.
And that's what Sunday is so helpful for.
Yes,
I think our kids
on Sunday.
Our kids look so forward to Sunday because we're going pretty much Monday through Saturday at 100 miles an hour. And then on Sunday, like the kids know, like, no, we're doing hardly anything. I mean, we're just chilling.
Yeah. And maybe you just said this, I was distracted, but
it's fun.
Like the busier we've gotten and the older our kids have gotten, it used to be like, yay, let's do all these fun things. And now we're doing nothing.
Yeah. On Sunday. And the kids enjoy it.
Like lock it down, like nap, just chill because we all need it so bad. And you're right. That's how God made us. So that's really good. I'm not looking at questions. Tell me if there's any we need to answer.
We got one, but I want to wrap up this topic before we go. Let's get to it.
Really quick. Let's talk about
wrap
two
up
more
what you
things.
need to, and we'll get to it. It's from Elisha Maxfield. We want to get to that question.
Okay, great. I want to just touch on 2 more things on this topic, and then I'll be done. I promise. Right. Okay, we talked about sleep, very important. Okay, here's a fun one. Parents of high school age girls, if your daughter is under enough stress, be it relationships, just school in a sport like a hard basketball season, a hard track season, that she loses her period, that is a red flag. And if anyone in this audience is listening and they're like, I'm uncomfortable, you need to grow up. Yeah. Okay. This is part of life. And if women didn't have periods, none of y'all would be here. All right. It's a perfectly, just like, it's part of life. It's how God made us. And it is the wheel that keeps humanity turning. Okay. It is, I come from a background, like just at my age, when I was back at school studying sports science, even then it was so common for track athletes, cross-country athletes, dancers, gymnasts. Those are the most common sports, but of course this can happen in other scenarios also. So common for them to completely, not have a period for a year. Due to just, one way or another, the best way to say it is just too much stress, too much exercise, not enough eating, too much emotional stress, too much school.
Working your body really hard and not compensating on the other side with food and stuff like that.
Exactly. Right. And it was totally looked on as totally normal. Coaches were like, great, it's a pesky thing. Just who cares? And but in the field of
super unhealthy.
In exercise science, there's actually such a thing as the female athlete triad, which is a cluster of symptoms that is so common that it got its special name, and that is how do you say it? Amerenia.
That sounds right.
Does that sound right? Being without, not having a period, osteopenia, so weak bones, and eating disorder. And there's a reason that those
they all happen together.
Yep.
Wow.
That's the female athlete triad. No, I'm not saying that if your daughter is running track season and she loses her period, then she is also, has her bones are brittle and she has an eating disorder. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying those three things come together often. Okay. And now doctors are starting, especially doctors who are really well-versed in female physiology and hormones, they are calling a woman's menstrual cycle her fifth vital sign. Okay, so we're not going to go deep dive into this because we're running out of time, but it is very important.
Like a vital sign. Give me an example of vital sign. Like your heart beating.
Like your pulse.
Like your pulse.
Yes,
And
like
so period would be a vital sign.
Her fifth vital sign.
Okay.
So that is to say that if it becomes disrupted, it was regular and now it's not due to whatever.
Yeah.
That is a red flag. Now, let's say she's running track, she loses her period. Number one, does she even know that that's unhealthy? Have you had that conversation with her? Number two, do you have the kind of relationship with your daughter that she will tell you about that? Okay. And then number three, what can y'all do to help her get it back? I'm not saying at all that this means she has to quit the track team or the basketball team or school or life, because all these girls, and this will be true for men and women from this age all the way through the rest of life, you basically have a stress bucket, okay? And everybody comes out with a different size of stress bucket. Gabe's is a lot bigger than mine, I can tell you that.
Mine's pretty large.
But sickness, not sleeping, relationships, school demands, sports, all of those things are just a stress, and that's how your body reads it. They're all good. Not the sickness part, but a lot of them are good things. But your body, it's a signal, it's an additional stress. So when that stress bucket gets full, and I think a lot of us hang out just like, like a kid who filled their cup up with milk and it's just right there and they can't, that's what our stress buckets are like. So you add in track season or, I don't know, finals week, just something stressful. That can be enough for a female body to lose her period, because what that means is the body is like, okay, not enough food, too much exercise, too much stress, not a good time to have a baby. Granted, we don't want our high school girls to have a baby, but that's what physiologically is going on in your body. Okay. So it is a symptom of health and safety that your body has a regular menstrual cycle. So I want you to pay attention to that. Do not be weird and not talk about these things. Talk to your daughter about these things. And a lot of times, if it's an athlete, if it's a sports issue, she just needs to eat more. Most of the time. Maybe sleep more. Maybe reel in some of the other, extracurricular things that she's doing, but most of the time she just needs to eat
problem.
More. But we need to be having these sorts of conversations. It needs to be regular. It needs to be normal. And you need to look at that as a vital sign, because that's what it is. Okay. And then
especially you should like the solution of eating more.
Yeah.
It's like you're working very hard. You're doing track, you're doing basketball, you're doing school, you're doing all these things.
Important.
It's like, just eat more.
Eat more. Give your body signals that you're running hard right now, but look at all this food. You're fine. Okay. It's really important. And we could say way more about that, but I just want to touch on immunity really, really quickly, and then we can answer a question and then I'll go. Okay. So
immunity.
What do you
mean by immunity?
Or like immune support, because this is a time where kids get sick all the time. Number one, they're all in this big building or all together in this homeschool co-op or whatever. And so there's just a lot of germs. We all know that, right? A lot of them, like we've been talking about, aren't eating well or eating enough. They're underslept. They're under high stress. That all of those things are going to compromise your immune system. All of them. Okay. So if you want to help your kids out, and I have all my kids doing this stuff, and they're even younger than the group of kids that we're talking about. I would say it is a very safe bet to give them like 5,000 IUs of vitamin D. Again, I'm normally a proponent of test, don't guess, but most kids are just not going to have super high vitamin D, especially if you live where we do.
And North Idaho.
And these kids are indoors all day. They're in the school building. They're in the basketball gym. They're in there. They're not getting even close to the,
vitamin D from the sun.
Healthy level of sun. So like just a standard, like 5,000 IUs vitamin D, take it with K2. K2 helps with absorption. That D, we've talked about this in other podcasts. It helps with everything. immunity just being one of them. I also am a huge fan, especially for women, to get on a good B12 or a good B complex, ideally a methylated one. Especially for girls, and this can be true for guys too, but a lot of the nutritive sources of B12, we're high school age kids are not eating. Like, they're not eating a ton of red meat, they're not eating a bunch of leafy greens, and even then sometimes you're not getting enough. B12 and the B complex will help greatly with immunity, which is awesome. It also is huge for mood. And again, like I said before, how many of these just like characteristic I don't know, personality traits that we sort of just throw on high school age, adolescent girls, like, well, they're just so emotional and they're just so moody. And why are you always depressed? How much of it is just deficiency, and what an easy thing to at least try and help them. Thorne, again, I go to Thorne a lot. It's a brand I like. They have excellent methylated B complexes. They have one specifically for athletes. They have a basic B complex, and they also have one for stress. And
Thorne, Thorn.
I think there's an E on the end. Yeah. So you can go to their website. You can find a lot of their stuff on Amazon, but you can also go to their website, and their website's really nice, and it gives really good explanations of everything. And it's basically just all these different B complexes in different ratios, depending on what specifically you're looking for. But I mean, I think that's a no-brainer, especially during cold and flu season, or if you've got a daughter who's like sad all the time and you don't know why, or just is having a hard time kind of mentally, emotionally, get her on a good B complex and see what happens. Electrolyte, we already talked about. We even talked through kind of some of the ratios. I would say definitely your athletes year round, but you could probably make a good argument that all your kids should be on one. And then lastly, some magnesium glycinate, or maybe some magnesium L-threonate, depending on what it is you're specifically looking for. But at night, just to help, it's just, we're almost all mag deficient, as we've already talked about, adults, kids, everyone. And it really helps calm the body and calm the mind and help sleep. And since we're, here talking about how much we need more sleep, a little bit of mag at bedtime is a really, really good idea. So that's just some kind of baseline.
All right. Very, very good. Is that we want to wrap? Let's wrap that up just for a second. So we're gonna end here. We got one question that we weren't able to get to that I thought would be good to get to here before Annie has to go pick up our kids. Is Elisha Maxfield over on YouTube says, any suggestions for postpartum health, nutrition, weight gain loss, and muscle loss building? Don't you think it's Alicia, considering the question? What did I say? You said Elisha. Elisha? Sorry, Alicia. Ooh. I'm pretty sure you're a girl. No, I thought Elisha could be a girl too. Okay. The answer to this, I'm moving on. Didn't we do a podcast on this? Yeah. A little bit? Postpartum health, nutrition, weight gain. Yeah. We just did one like a couple. Like 2 weeks ago. What was that called? Exercise, nutrition during pregnancy. So go look for that. We kind of touched on all those things to some degree. And then in that podcast, I recommend working out while being pregnant and stuff like that. We talk about nutrition too, but there's also a book called Real Food for Pregnancy that is phenomenal on the just like nutrition side of things. And then I also referenced a podcast in that episode. So go look at that episode. I cannot something. I'm gonna try to drop something, Mama. I can't remember, but I referenced the podcast in this episode. And that's an excellent one on the exercise side of things. So there's tons of resources there. So just go find that podcast. Just go find that episode. See if I can drop it right here in the comments. Hang on here. There we go. I did. I dropped it. Hey, good job. I dropped it in YouTube and Facebook. So those who are listening but didn't ask the question, you'll be able to see that episode in all our channels that we're looking at right now. So there. Yes. Great. Except for Facebook. Why didn't it go to Facebook? Oh, there it did. Okay. Well, anything there? Any closeout, baby? I don't think so. So much there, guys. Kids we ask a lot of them and they're doing a lot. And let's, if there's things that we can do within our power to help them. It's Alicia. Succeed. It's Alicia. Alicia. So my wife wins. Yeah. Sorry, Alicia. I always win. Yeah. 50-50. Not even. That's not true. All right, y'all. Email us, RenchMedia@gmail.com. We'd love to answer your questions. And some of them we'd bring them on the show like we did today. And of course, make sure you follow my wife over at Instagram, Annie M. Wrench, over at Instagram. And whenever you spell wrench, make sure it's RENCH, not WRENCH. Our YouTube channel, please follow our YouTube channel. Of course, we go live on our Cross Politics channel, but we'd like to push you and encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/@ that little @ sign, Gabe Wrench. That's our YouTube channel, @Gabe Wrench, and everything. So subscribe over there, and we'll be back here next Thursday. Next Thursday. You aren't flying out till the week after that. So
Friday.
Her
yes.
sister had her second baby this week, and you're going to go out and visit. It's a baby boy. It's a giant man baby.
Giant baby.
I'm pretty sure it's in
I'm
line of
gonna have to
Bigfoot.
Engage my core
Yeah.
to hold him. But
I mean,
I'm
it
really
came out over
excited.
10 pounds, right? It's over.
10, 13.
Yeah, almost 11.
If you're listening, Abby, we don't know how you did it. We don't know how you did
Almost
it.
11-pound
He's
baby.
adorable, and
Awesome.
I can't wait.
Yeah,
to
so
hold him,
Annie's
but
going to go in a couple weeks over there to California to hang out with the big sis, the little sis. So
Looking forward to it.
thank you guys for tuning in to Water Break.
Yep.
We'll see you next
See you
week.
next week.
What we believe as Christians is that Jesus is Lord over everything, that he is the way, the truth, and the life. All things are made by him and through him, and therefore his creation reflects that.
Everything that we're learning about, whether it's science or math or history, literature, there are transcendental truths that show themselves through all those subjects.
I love showing my students the connections between how God sovereignly has ordered all the subjects to glorify him, whether that's through how math, all the numbers work together perfectly. He's an orderly God, or through orthography in the written word. He gave us his word in the form of the Bible, and I try to encourage my students that they can glorify God by learning to read well.
They're talking about the teeny tiny parts of the cell and how does that even fit in the stem of a plant. And I'm able to say, well, our creator God, who pays attention to every single detail, planned it that way. And that's why it is the way it is.
I think we're distinctly marked as Christian because we're going to God's word and we're praying and starting our day with that. And I think starting the day with that is very important.
We pray in our classroom. When we have issues with students, we have them pray together and encourage each other in that way. So I would say that we see, just as we build their character, that we're putting Christ at the center.
God certainly expects a lot of us, and it's not a bad thing that he does, and by his grace he helps us. And so we want to pair high expectations with a loving care for each one of our students and a willingness to come alongside them and push them and encourage them to live up to those standards.
It's challenging academically, but it's also challenging in we want them to be wise, eloquent, virtuous young men and women. So we're looking for mature in heart and mind.
I think it's a character building and sanctifying to kind of be in and over your head a little bit because they have to face the fear they have in themselves that maybe they're not good enough or inadequate in some way. And to be able to prove that wrong over and over and over again has been, I think, one of the biggest areas of growth that I've seen.
God commands us to let his word dwell in us richly in psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. We're to worship him musically. We're to proclaim his word musically. And so we want to train up our students, our children, to be able to sing skillfully with music, to understand what they're doing. The Bible says sing with understanding. But it's all couched in studying God's word, growing up as Christian worshipers. Sometimes I know people are a little scared of music camp because maybe they're not a musical family, but it's for everybody. It's a mix of real beginners and more advanced students, and they help one another that way.
But the thing that really gives it weight and glory is that the whole week is focused towards a concert, a glorious presentation of the music we've been working on all week long. So there's this goal in mind. There's something that the students not just participate in, but actively create.
I'll see students who come in who have had no musical experience. You can tell they're overwhelmed by first day. They're just awed by it because they've been part of something that is new to them and much larger than them, something they've not experienced before. And I would say the majority of times, those kinds of students come back because they've tasted something that's really glorious, a foretaste of heaven.
These students are learning through the course of their time at music camp not to be music consumers, but to be active participants in making music. So not only to learn how to sing well, how to understand music as it's written on a page and how it comes together in a group environment, but to be able to take those experiences and have them be the seeds that are planted for their involvement their whole life in the musical life of the church. We want these students to be the next wave of worshipers in the church who know how to sing to God.